Start, of course, with this pay rise issue. And this has been a really big issue for NHS staff across the board, having them, largely, we often think about the doctors, the consultants, but actually an awful lot of people on average or below average pay, the hospital porters, the like, and the technicians, as well as the nurses. And it became a real political football at the last general election as well, over the amount of money. And indeed, a big political football, didn't it, during the Brexit campaign over that extra £350 million that could be freed, that we were told by the Vote Leave campaign to spend on the NHS. But it looks like there is going to be an above 1% pay rise offer. But I wonder how good that's going to look to NHS workers.
Well, it's interesting how the government always comes up with these great headlines, isn't it?
Well, to be fair, The Guardian has published this, though.
Yeah, but it's 6.5%, which sounds great until, as you have just pointed out, it's 6.5% over 3 years, which means about 2.1, 2.2% a year. Well, inflation's currently running at 3% a year and has been running slightly higher than that, which means that in real terms, it's going to continue to be a cut. Now, we've got staff, as you say, absolute unsung heroes in the hospitals, the physiotherapists, speech and language therapists, the porters, the technicians, everybody working there. And they've seen their real incomes cut by up to 14% in recent years.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It is. I mean, I've got my sister-in-law's a nurse, and there's no question at all. This has hit people at a really difficult time when prices are going up. But in terms of this is better than a lower offer, of course. Lots of people were talking. I mean, I know the Labour front bench were talking about even a 5% pay rise to actually make up for those years of undercutting. But the interesting thing is we've seen a massive problem in terms of retaining NHS staff, particularly nurses and midwives. But when they're questioned in the Midwifery Council, Nursing Council, when they actually ask, these people, why are you leaving? Pay is often not the number one issue. Often they say it's working conditions and it's the stress, it's hours. But I imagine that the pay has had a knock-on effect in the sense that as more and more people leave, and particularly more experienced staff leave, actually that makes the working conditions harder for everyone else who stays.
You're absolutely right. There is a domino effect. And of course, we mustn't forget this idea that they're going to have their holidays cut by 1 day a year as well. So that's going to make it even harder. I think it's perhaps not necessarily to do with pay, because so many of the nurses and other staff that I work with, and let's not forget we have a real recruitment crisis, particularly among GPs, so it's doctors as well as nurses. So many of us say that it's actually the way that we are treated. I've just seen a tweet on my Twitter line from somebody who was a junior doctor. She put in 9 months in advance for her holiday to go on her honeymoon and get married, and she'd waited 9 months to be told if she could go ahead with her wedding.
Yeah, I mean, just utterly ridiculous. That's when you just call in sick. I'm sorry, and I'd back you in an employment tribunal on that. But that's it. There are other issues, aren't there? But the holiday leave.
There are lots of other issues.
A lot of people have been tweeting in though, saying, some quite angry tweets actually from people saying, look, I don't get that sort of holiday leave. Holiday leave in the public sector, particularly the NHS, is pretty good, and indeed can often go up. As you're longer service, the more holiday leave you get. A lot of people in the private sector saying, we don't get that level of holiday leave. It's not such a big thing to lose. I have to say, one of the things that I really care about is holiday leave, and it's not because I don't love my job, not because I don't want to work hard, but it's just I value that time. I value that time with my family, and frankly, if you can get away with it, take as much holiday as you can. But do you think it's reasonable for people to say, look, it's probably worth giving up that holiday? You already get quite a lot.
I'm not the one being asked to give it up. Currently, I work in general practice. Yeah. Of course, we determine our own holidays. But the difference there, of course, is that if we take more holidays, then we work harder when we're there. We cover each other. So there are huge differences between the different areas of medicine. I seem to have my apologies. I've got a ticking going on and I can't stop it.
Don't worry.
My apologies. So I think that, that's a fairly minor issue. Yeah. I think the issue we've got is that all these people tweeting in and saying this is not good enough, why can't they just accept it? Well, the simple fact of the matter is that staff in the NHS are absolutely at the end of their tethers. I don't think I can remember the last time I met a colleague in the NHS who doesn't work way above their given hours already, so they're already working above and beyond. People do not stop and clock off if they've got a sick patient.
No,
they
indeed.
stay and they look after that patient. And I think the simple fact of the matter is people in the the NHS are voting with their feet. That's before we even get on to Brexit and the horrendous impact that Brexit is having on allied healthcare professionals and doctors not applying to stay on in the NHS or planning to leave.
Well, we've got more people who've come to work in the NHS from the EU in the last year than before the Brexit vote.
Those are not the figures that I've seen. And I think
the official figures.
Concern,
the official figures.
Well, the real concern, of course, is whether or not people who are already here, the really experienced ones, are going to stay. And it needs to be people at the right grades. We've got people who have lived here for years and who are absolutely, if they haven't got family, for instance, are planning to leave because they're uncertain about their future.
No, but that's silly. No, but I'm sorry. If they're that skilled and that educated and that professional and that useful to us, they would know that they're not going to be expected to leave and they're going to have the right to stay here. They know perfectly well that there's not. I can assure you, I can hand on heart. There is not a single person anywhere anywhere to do with the government of Brexit who thinks that anyone who's living here in the EU, who's living here legally, is going to be expected to leave or want asked to leave. It's a load of nonsense.
Well, that's not the way they feel.
Well, then they should research more. If these are such highly prized employees, they'd have to. A cursory Google search would tell them that they won't be asked to leave and they will have the legal right to stay here. A cursory Google search. If they can't be bothered to do that, they're probably not much use to us in the NHS, are they?
And how welcome will they feel?
Well, why won't they feel
welcome? How welcome do people feel? We've seen a huge.
Hold on a minute. Look, you know what? I want to ask you about blood pressure drugs, but I'm not going to let this stand. The idea that the British, there's nothing wrong with my blood pressure. The idea that the British people carrying out a democratic vote to have sovereign control over their own country is in any way two fingers up to any foreign workers here who are here legally is an absolute load of nonsense. That you're playing into the whole xenophobic sort of anti-foreigners line. It's nothing to do with that. It's about democratic sovereignty. I think that's an absolute nonsense. I really do.
How long have you worked as an inner city GP in a multicultural area in inner city London?
What's your point?
How often do you speak to patients who don't feel welcome here, to colleagues who don't feel welcome here? I do every day.
Why do they not feel welcome here? Because of a democratic vote? Do they not like democracy? I thought they came to live here because they like democracy.
Simple fact of the matter is they do not feel welcome here and they're concerned and they are voting with their feet. It doesn't matter. You can complain all you like about the reasons for going back. We are the ones who are going to
Well, you say that, Sarah, but the official statistics they state quite categorically, since the Brexit vote, more EU people have come to live in this country to work in the NHS than have left. Full stop. That's the official statistics. So whatever you claim you've seen, I'm sorry, whatever you're reading on online, I'm sorry, it's fake news because the real statistics are provided by the NHS. They know what the nationality is of the people who've come to work in the EU and the people who've left. I'm going to get you onto the topic, then we're going to get onto blood pressure drugs.
I'm just going to point out that the difference between you and me is you're reading online. I'm seeing it every day in my surgery.
No, I'm not reading it online. Sarah, I'm not reading it on. Sarah, I'm reading the official NHS statistics on the number of staff coming to work in the NHS from the EU and the ones leaving the NHS to go back to other EU countries.
I think the Brexit line was that you were fed up of all those statistics and all those experts.
That wasn't the Brexit line. Sarah, you have so given in to the Remain nonsense about this and the lies and the smears about this. A democratic vote was held. People made their decision.
It wasn't surgery and I've got a patient.
Well, you go and talk to your patient. We'll talk about blood pressure. You go and do that. Let's move on. Dr. Sarah Jarvis, GP and Clinical Director of Patient.co.uk. They can bring it into everything, can't they? They can bring Brexit. Literally, Brexit is not the reason why we're not getting as many NHS nurses coming in from Spain. It's because we tightened up the requirements for the language skills. Oh, and by the way, Spain's economy is booming and they're hiring more nurses. So what surprise they don't have to come over here to work? Dearie me. Let's bring in Vicky, who's in Croydon. She's an NHS worker herself. Good morning to you, Vicky.
Hello there,
Vicky. Look, I wanted to ask Dr. Sarah Jarvis about blood pressure, but it's all going up for everyone now. Vicky, now look, Sarah Jarvis. She won't actually be affected by this NHS pay rise. It doesn't affect dentists and it doesn't affect doctors, but it would affect NHS workers like you. What do you do in the NHS, and what do you make of this offer as it's on the table right now?
I'm a mental health worker, and so basically, I deliberately took a pay cut to work with patients rather than work in the community and not really spend much time with them.
Yeah.
So I'm on quite a low pay band.
You wanted to do fulfilling work rather than
Yeah,
well-paid work, and
absolutely.
there often is
Yeah.
that choice. But I mean, look,
Yeah.
you will have had along with every other NHS worker, those 1% pay rises. I mean, I'm going to put my little fingers up for quotation marks, pay rises. They were real terms, pay cuts over the years. Would you be willing then to give up another day's holiday in return for getting a bit of a pay rise?
Right, well, I want to put some misconceptions to bed because there seems to be people texting and thinking we get 35 days a year. We don't. I certainly don't. I get 25 days a
Plus
year.
bank holidays, and there's 8 bank holidays. Is that
sorry?
right? Plus bank holidays or not?
I think, no, that's annual leave. So
Yeah,
I get
5 weeks
25
annual leave plus 8 bank
Yeah,
holidays.
but
So
I
that's 6.5 weeks, yeah.
No,
There's
I
8
don't
bank
think it is.
holidays, 5 weeks, 25,
No,
20.
No. It's not. It's not 6 weeks. It doesn't equate to 6 weeks. The bank holidays we work. If we don't work them, we don't get paid for them. So in effect, it acts as a day off. We don't get them returned. So no, it doesn't
Okay.
work like that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
because a lot of people do get
Yeah.
those on top. So you're saying, look, we don't get. I mean, apparently you can get in some of the NHS jobs. The longer you work in that job, the longer you can accrue extra days holiday. But you're saying, look, but standard NHS workers, you're on your 5 weeks. You're not getting any more than that, and you wouldn't be willing to give any of that up.
If I had to reduce my actual annual leave down any more, I mean, it's not really very much at the moment. It's certainly not enough to sort of like have family time, really.
Yeah. So
regularly.
no deal for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I don't get paid very much. I really don't think that the pay that they would offer me would be worth losing more annual leave. And is it really a pay rise if you're taking another benefit away from the employee?
And inflation's already higher.